So welcome to another session of English 101. Definitely in the beginning of the course, we talked about your writing process. It's very complicated and unpredictable depending on the assignment or project you are working on. As a matter of fact, I would be interested in knowing what you think about your writing process and your writing process as it is rather than as it should be, and if it has changed over the course of time, over the course of this particular course. So this is a new recording where I talk about my writing process.
Briefly describe my writing process. Mine begins with freaking out, with pain, and most of the time it ends in pleasure. But the process is very slow and painful indeed in itself. But it is worthwhile. I begin with generating ideas through free writing, some big ideas that I try to extract, some focus ideas from to definitely shape my ideas and thoughts about the writing project that I'm working on. It is in this process that I also embark on research to reshape and also redefine and refine my research question in terms of basically the scope and method of inquiry. Now, the drafting process itself is multi-layered because I have to pay attention to the expectations of the audience, to the text type, the genre, and also the purpose for which I'm writing. And all these basically are rigorous efforts that would slow down the process of writing itself. If I'm fortunate enough to have a peer reviewer and receive positive, constructive comment, I would apply those towards the revision. The revision process for me is multi-layered. In essence, I focus on the content of what I have produced, followed by the organization of the text, its coherence, and eventually by the language or stylistic concerns. I would be focusing on proofreading and editing, as a matter of fact, on the hard copy rather than on the surface of a computer screen, which would escape some significant surface errors. So if everything goes well, upon the successful completion of the writing project, I definitely feel enjoyment and pleasure. But it is a process that one has to carry through, a process that is recursive rather than linear. That is, in short, my writing process. How is yours?
Okay. So the floor is open to discussion now. Anyone would care to comment what you discussed in your breakout room in terms of your writing process and the ways in which yours, for instance, was similar to or different from those who were in the same room with you?
Okay, my breakout room classmates and we kind of have the same writing process. First, we choose the topic we're gonna write about, of course, and then we do like we read about, the concept, and then we kind of like write a draft, also following the outline. We outline what we're gonna be writing in the first paragraph, and then the second, and so on. And then kind of like, especially me, I write kind of like freely without kind of like judgment, like, oh, this is not good, this is not very academic, but then I rewrite like after I do the first draft. And then also they do the same as we were discussing. So yeah, I think it was basically that.
I see. So you basically write with your heart, and then when you go back, you reread it with your mind.
Yes, exactly. Because I feel like it's easier if I start writing like, oh, kind of like being very judgmental, like, oh, it needs to be great. It would take me like, I don't know, 2 weeks to write. So I feel like I just let it all out. I write,
Mhm.
and then I kind of like rewrite everything. I go through as many times as I need to. Um, yeah, and then I find like even like the girls, they say they like outline help.
Mhm.
Actually, outline helps a lot, you know. Okay, the first paragraph I'm gonna write about something, and then the second I'm gonna be write about other thing. I think it's also even easier to divide your thoughts, you know.
Right. So some people, rather than writing the entire paragraph, basically would write a phrase or what happens to be, for instance, the topic sentence of each paragraph. And that would create in itself some kind of an outline that could
Mhm.
guide the writer through. Uh, but definitely, as you said, it is important not to subject oneself to monitoring censorship initially, because that slows down the entire process. Mar-
Yeah, it does. Sorry.
What?
Marina,
Yeah, Professor.
what is your process like?
Yeah, Professor. You say right now I do the same because when I am writing the essay, first I try to write the topic sentence in every paragraph.
Mhm.
After I tried my topic sentence, I know that what this topic about be, what is this the paragraph about be, what should I include in this paragraph. Then when I finish this topic, this paragraph, I go to another one that and then I read like I read 2 3 times my topic sentence that what should I include in this paragraph.
Right. So
Yeah.
where does basically research come in
The research,
when you run out of ideas?
like sometimes when I ran out, I search for.
Mhm. So at what stage is it, in the beginning, towards the middle, towards the end, or it happens all over?
Sometimes it happened when I don't have a lot of information about the topic.
Yeah.
Like when I write my profile essay, I had a lots of information. I interview my brother and I had enough information about this topic, and I had myself. I had a lot of information, and I just write it. When I write about remembered event essay, it's also about my past, and I know what should I write about. I had a lot of information about that. But when I write a concept essay, it was for me very difficult. I know what I know what does jihad mean, but I didn't know a lot of information about that how people have different perspective in this concept, what that mean, how the people think about that, and then this kind of essay I need information, and I must to include sources.
Exactly. That's what probably made it more, because you had to draw on sources and present multiple perspectives or definitions of the concept. And definitely, a profile essay leaves more room for subjectivity. It is true that it uses both subjectivity and objectivity, but there is room for subjectivity. But in writing a concept essay, uh, as you said, it is more definitely challenging because it is based on using multiple sources. And that makes it very difficult. to be an expert.
Yeah, Professor, if I say that jihad means that not killing non-Muslim people,
Mhm.
and I don't have any improved any things that I prove what it mean, where I take the source, what that mean. It's difficult for the reader too, and for me too. That how should I improve my words?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. No matter how confident or competent you may think you are when it comes to a topic, and this is true of your research paper as well, you run out of ideas very quickly. And that is where research basically comes in and makes the writing process more complex and complicated. Um, Jasmine?
Yes. My writing process has improved
Mm-hmm.
by the way I cite my evidence
Mm-hmm.
is very different. I
Right.
also believe that my writing process has improved by the way I format my text. Like I
Mm-hmm.
structure it. Like I won't just put like the thesis and then it all looks all sloppy and sounds sloppy. Instead, now I can structure it very specifically.
Right.
I also learned that having specific detail, like if I'm gonna explain something, like state something, I have to explain it afterwards.
Right. Definitely. It is not just basically to throw in basically something, but to comment on it and to prepare the reader for not only what is to come, but also to be able to analyze, comment, and critique the source. And that really requires the academic skill of not only analyzing, but synthesizing the
Yes.
source material.
I also learned that that feedback is also very good for your essays.
Right. Yeah, excellent point. And as I mentioned in my basically um, brief introduction to the writing process, definitely feedback is crucial
Yes.
to the process of writing.
I also learned that not to over explain yourself or else they won't get the point of your essay.
Exactly. I still have to work on that myself too.
Yeah, and getting to your main point. I know how to do that now.
Yeah, definitely. That's basically one of the features of academic, basically essay, that you have to be, there is what is called Grice's maxims: quantity, quality, relation, and which is the question of relevance, and manner, which is truthfulness. All these four components are crucial to establishing textual authority, authenticity, and integrity, as you mentioned. And
Yes.
all really goes back to being focused and not digressing.
Yeah, and that's basically it, I think.
Okay, great. Yeah, excellent points that you raised. Kathy, how about you?
To be honest, essay writing has always kind of been a little bit easier for me.
Mhm.
But the critique on my essays that I write, it helps me out a lot more on how to brainstorm my next coming
Mhm.
up essay, or just, okay, I need to add this into this next essay that I need to make sure, so that when I write my next essay, I look back at the comments and I make sure that I implement them on my new essay so that it comes out a little bit better on the first try.
Yeah,
Um,
excellent point. Mhm.
the only one I did have a little bit of trouble is, I'm not gonna lie about, is the last essay we had to write. I think I just needed to go into details a little bit more.
Mhm.
And the
Your
part where I use my
concept
resources,
essay? Is that the concept essay,
the
Kathy?
concept essay, yes.
What was your concept?
My concept was Spanglish.
Spanglish, right.
So I think it was just more into implementing the resources that I use. I
Exactly.
need to just find a way on how to enter them so it's not too many of them, and it's an
Mhm.
actual essay and not just resources.
Right, definitely. So it's an interesting, really topic, but as you said, it is very difficult uh, to integrate, to pick, select, the appropriate sources, and at the same time to be able to synthesize them in a way that you really want to continue your definition, focusing on what Spanglish is, what it is, how it is viewed, how it is defined, the relevant example that one could find in everyday basically interaction, and how the speakers of the language variety definitely feel about Spanglish themselves. So and eventually what makes it more challenging is how do you define Spanglish, to what do you attribute this? It is very difficult because it has been studied, not as studied as widely, for instance, as African American English, but Spanglish has been studied as well. For instance, it is called to be different from, for instance, Chicano English. Definitely, because those who speak Chicano English do not really know Spanish. Because English is their primary basically language. They just use some features of Spanish in the way they communicate. So were you able to come up with a definition of your own?
My own definition would just be, I've always seen Spanglish as I'm talking in English and I slip in Spanish words, or vice versa. I'm speaking in Spanish and I slip in English words, or I can't find that one word on how to explain it in Spanish, so I'll say it in English. That's how I've always, that's what I've always considered Spanglish.
Right. So essentially, when you mix Spanish and English, and definitely you must be proficient in both languages. It is not just because of lack of basically knowledge in one language that you may be mixing the two languages. It depends on the participants, the setting, the topic of the conversation that is going on, and all those determine. Perhaps, and the most important challenge is not just the literal definition. What kind of basically identity does this mixing of the two languages or code switching create for you? A dual basically identity, for instance, so on and so forth. So this is an area where basically the real challenge probably to come up with a definition from the multiple definitions that you have been able to find in dictionaries, encyclopedias, articles, so on and so forth. And you might think, oh, it has already been defined. But by looking at the evolution of how the word has come to be, you might be able to come up with a genuine and original definition or implication of this kind of code switching. Jacqueline, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi. So, my writing process, I would say, I think it's kind of like similar to what the other girls have said so far. I like to brainstorm like my ideas first, think about what I'm gonna write about, and then after that, um, I just jot down ideas until I pick the perfect topic that I want to write about, that I feel like I can just easily free write about it. And then when I do that, I do like to break it up in sections as well. So the first paragraph will be specifically about one thing, and then I like to move it on to another thing, and then I just go from there. I feel like my writing has improved a little bit just because before I feel like I was very repetitive when I would write an essay. I would repeat myself throughout the whole essay. As to now, I do write down my ideas, and then I will put what each paragraph will be about. And that way I'm not all over the place, just talking about the same thing over and over and over. And then I do like to get a lot of feedback. So I do like to like show my friends. I like when they tell me what I could do better.
Mhm.
And I think that helps me as a writer to
Mm.
improve. So I like that. And
Yeah,
that's basically
definitely.
it.
Yeah. Again, I want to highlight the importance of peer review, especially, meaningful peer reviews could be definitely consequential. Uh, and reflection, as you said, and I think Jacqueline also, who else spoke before Jacqueline, uh, pointed out, and Marina also did, the importance of reflecting on basically your writing process. Uh, and the whole question of repetitiveness. Um, what is definitely paradoxical is you have to recycle the same idea throughout your essay, but interestingly enough, you have to repeat yourself, but each time in a different way, not in the same way, because the central idea or your thesis, whatever it is the same thing. But if you repeat yourself in the same way, you will be boring yourself and your audience to death. And that's what really builds coherence, to say the same thing, but each time in a different way. Because it is the same thesis statement that you try to recirculate throughout your paragraphs and the entirety of the text. But to do so in a way that it is engaging, novel, and genuine, um, um, and a recurrent, basically, idea, but each time in a different way. Anyone else? Claudio? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Well, the way I approach it is, first I keep in mind what the subject is, the topic,
Mm-hmm.
and I also keep in mind my audience, because that's how I feel comfortable writing.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to think of what my audience is about to hear, or how they're going to interpret what I'm saying,
Right.
and brainstorming. That's what I do. I brainstorm before I get to the draft. Brainstorm at least a page or two,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, like everyone just mentioned, feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That helps me out a lot with the process of writing too. Also, depending on the genre, depending on the topic of the essay, if there's something informal or more personal, I
Mm-hmm.
tend to recall on instances in my life, or something that I could mold and write.
Right.
You,
Mm-hmm.
do you understand what I'm saying? That's how I kind of
Mm-hmm.
approach it.
Definitely, the purpose, as you mentioned, and also the audience, and also in connection with those two important factors, um, the audience, as you said, all these find their meaning in the kind of genre that you're writing. And let's face it, as you mentioned, we feel more comfortable with some genres. Some students, for instance, like you, for instance, would like or find it much easier to tackle essays that deal with personal matters or memoirs, so on and so forth. While some basically prefer to write more academically and formally, far removed from their personal engagement with the topic. But what makes basically writing interesting and challenging is, as a matter of fact, when we write within a particular genre, we could use different types of text, ranging from personal. For instance, Kathy was talking about Spanglish. We're writing an expository essay, a concept essay. She draws on her personal experiences. She, for instance, interviews her friends. She perhaps recorded some typical interactions to provide examples of what typical interactions or exchanges are when it comes to Spanglish. She used multiple sources to see what their point of view basically is. So she really combined various strategies to argue for her own particular position. So you see, comparing, contrasting, describing, defining, using personal anecdotes and stories, all these different subgenres or different types of text come to play a significant role in the construction of the essay, even though it is an expository writing. So I think it is important to keep in mind that genres are not clearly basically defined or cut categories. Even though when we read a text, we should be able to tell if this is a narrative or this is a profile, this is an exposition, or explaining a concept, or this is proposing a solution or an argumentation. Definitely we have to recognize, and these grand genres exist, but within the grand genres, we do use different basically writing strategies that are used in different or in the same genres, if you see what I mean, Claudio.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about.
Okay, so Michelle, did you have anything to say just to conclude this part?
Yes, I usually just do an outline, and on the outline I write in each paragraph. I write my starting sentence, and after I do a rough draft, and I rewrite it after.
So you do typically what you have been told to do, and does it work for you?
Yes, after reading stories from the book, it gives me like an idea how to write my essay.
Yeah, definitely reading goes hand in hand with writing. It is impossible to be really a good writer if you're not a good reader. And for a course like this, or any kind of writing that we do, it is primarily reader-based. And not only reader-based, it is based on reading of what we really read. Obviously, quite a few of you have learned from the essays that we have read in terms of how to shape, for instance, your essays, not only contextually, thematically, but also structurally and even stylistically. Sometimes we have a process in place and it works. But let me tell you something. For instance, when you read the first paragraph, do you go back to make sure that it is acceptable, it is catchy, it is correctly written?
Yes, I do.
So do you see what I'm saying? So editing really happens as you write. How many times and how many of you have written the first sentence and then erased it or went back, you made some corrections, you changed some words, you changed the entire sentence, and then you were not happy, you got rid of the entirety of the sentence or the paragraph and you rewrote the whole thing. So this kind of proofreading and editing or rewriting or reviewing occurs throughout the whole process. Is it really healthy? No, it is not. As Peter Elbau says in an interesting essay that I will make available to you on Canvas, Free Write, he would consider that compulsive, basically, writing. And compulsive editing, when it is done prematurely, it stifles creativity. So it should really be avoided. I think it was Blaise, if I'm not mistaken, who argued that she free writes and she does not let basically anything interfere with the flow of her ideas until the very end. Otherwise, writing is process. It is going to be terribly slow if you go sentence by sentence, word by word, paragraph by paragraph. Do you see what I'm saying, Michelle?
Yes, I do.
So the process is really, as I said, it is recursive. We discuss multiple basically writing processes, and on the surface, they appear to be the same. In reality, when we do it, we don't follow basically a linear progression. It really changes. What research may happen in the beginning, or it may happen after you identify the topic. For instance, going to the research project that you're going to be working on, it is proposing a solution which is within the genre of argumentation. It is similar to taking a position, but definitely it is a subgenre of argumentation. So you have to identify a community-related issue or problem. And definitely there is a process of searching for community-related problems. There are multiple basic problems that we face, but how are you going to pick a problem that is serious enough, a problem that, for instance, has been offered solutions, the solutions have not worked, or the solutions have not been implemented. So all these really pose serious challenges to, okay, what kind of problem am I going to use for my research paper using 5 basically sources, and to craft or compose an academic research-based basically essay. So I'm sure that your writing processes would be different when it comes to this project. Now, in my assessment, I've tried to break it down for you when it comes to the writing process, when it comes to the research paper. So first, you are given the prompt. You have multiple readings in St. Martin's Handbook to writing, to get a sense of what basically this particular genre is all about. We discussed the expectations, the genre, the purpose, the audience, the text type that you're going to be using. You will spell out your statement of purpose by looking at multiple problems and picking one. But of course, what you pick is to be based on multiple criteria. You have to be able to show that this is a serious problem, that this problem has not been solved yet. It is still there. And then you have to identify the solutions that have been proposed and why those solutions have worked or have not worked. You have to identify the counterpoints, the counter arguments, and the ways in which those counter arguments would be used against the solution, alternative solutions that you would be proposing. So I'm going to break it down into, for instance, a statement of purpose, and then you have to compile. At what point would you start compiling research? Obviously, you have to know, you have to identify the problem. Now, the problem may not be just unique to your community, so that gives you more opportunity to do a comparative, contrastive analysis by using sources from elsewhere, as long as those sources are academic, but you could apply those to your particular essay. So you've been asked to write an annotated bibliography of 5 academic sources. We will talk about how to write an annotated bibliography. Then you will give a short progress report. After that, you do the first draft. We would have a peer review on the first draft, and then hopefully with comments from me, the general comments, individual comments, peer comments, you will be able to finalize your research paper. So, you know, that is a process which I think really basically makes the process, which is very complex, manageable.
Professor, I want to talk about the racism.
Yes. So, yeah, racism in the United States, definitely, it is a community-related problem.
Yeah.
So which particular community are you going to be focusing on?
Like on the American people or the white people? Black people and white.
Okay, so let me ask this question, and this question is not just to you, to everyone. Do you guys think that racism is a manageable topic? Definitely is a serious problem in the United States. But do you think it is manageable or too ambitious for a research, basically, project of several pages, 6, 7 pages at most? Do you think that is plausible?
Maybe if you go into depth as of way back when racism started into nowadays, how the similarities, differences, and really go into detailed, maybe.
Yeah, when we go to the slavery past, maybe we can find.
When you go to what?
The slavery. The background of Black people, like when they had been a slave.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but can slavery also be general, not just Black people? I mean,
no, it was just Black people.
Are we just talking about Black people, like the time when they were enslaved?
Yeah, but when they are slaves, the white people was owner.
Right, but Marina, you have a point, but what I'm trying to say is for this paper, I want you to identify a community-related problem. For instance, if in your particular neighborhood there is toxic waste, you know, if there is no clean water, if, for instance, a particular way of speaking is discriminated against, you see, that is how you narrow down the topic, rather than talking about the history of, racism overall. And obviously, you're not an expert, and experts have written immensely about this topic. But if you narrow down your topic within racism to a particular aspect, I would say that would be more promising. And as Claudia was saying, is it limited to African Americans, or is it, for instance, do you feel that For instance, Muslims or Afghanis are discriminated against in the United States. Do you have basically this issue of racial discrimination in your own basic community that your community is subjected to? That is something that you could basically manage. It is more focused in a way. Housing, for instance, let's put it this way, language discrimination. All of these would be more specific topics that one could handle.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you hear what I said, Marina?
Yeah, perfect. I got it.
For instance, voting rights, right? We just left basically an election behind. Voting rights, why certain groups have been historically deprived of voting. And now, they're making a big deal that there was fraud and so on and so forth during this election. Why? Because many people were encouraged to vote. Some people did actually that had never voted before. You could talk about, for instance, disability rights and the ways in which, for instance, someone who is disabled and a member of a minority is subjected to double oppression or racism in a way. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or a woman, for that matter. So would you like to spend a few minutes talking about your topics in the breakout room, or just we should go ahead with the open floor?
So this paper is going to be
Yes.
what is it going to be on? I'm sorry, what's going to be the concept?
Okay, let me just review basically the
before I go into
Mister, are we gonna do a research paper?
yes, it is a research paper, and you're going to be using 5 academic sources. Okay, so let me open the prompt and then okay, bear with me. Do you see my screen? Yes.
yes, I can see it.
Okay, so proposing a solution to a problem. Hopefully you're able to read this. Write an essay proposing a solution to a problem. Choose a problem faced by a community or a group to which you belong, and address your proposal to one or more members of the group or outsiders who might help solve the problem. So this is the prompt. Is that clear?
Yes.
Now, so basically, it could be a community-related problem, meaning the community that you belong to, ethnically, professionally, and academically.
Okay.
It could be any basically problem. It is important that, it is really a serious problem, and a problem that you can handle. So what we are trying basically in terms of the objectives is to be able to devise creative solutions to a problem, evaluate a range of possible solutions. A problem usually has multiple solutions, but we have to be able to evaluate those solutions that have been offered, learn about contemporary basically problems, and thank God we have so many of those, we can't really complain. Engage in reasoned argument, convince readers of a problem's significance before proposing actions. Now, this is a tricky thing. You have to establish really the seriousness of the problem. You cannot assume that, oh, everyone knows we have such a problem. But definitely establishing the seriousness and then the solutions, not to turn it into a problem essay, not to turn it into a solution essay. There should be a balance between basically the formulation of the seriousness of the problem and also the solutions. Define a problem concisely and effectively. So analyze your audience, as Claudio, you were saying, to anticipate likely questions and alternative preferred solutions. If you're dealing with homelessness in your particular area, definitely what solutions have been offered? When were these solutions offered? Who offered these solutions? And why basically the problem continues to plague the city of Los Angeles? How are you going to do this? Are you going to be interviewing, for instance, the homeless? Is it safe? Is it okay to be able to do this during these days? Or even if we didn't have the pandemic, what are your sources? You know, local newspapers such as Los Angeles Times, for instance, have written chronicles of essays about the problem that we have in the city. Definitely you could use Los Angeles Times, but that doesn't really qualify as an academic essay. So you would go to the databases of the college or Google Scholar to find academic essays. I will show you later on. You have to be able to refute, acknowledge, or otherwise respond to possible objections to your proposed solution or solutions. And this is a process of reading essays analytically, reflecting also metacognitively on what you have learned. So if you ask me what are the features, and if you read the chapter itself in your St. Martin's handbook, you will see these as the most salient features. That it has to be a well-focused, well-defined problem. It has to be a well-argued solution or well-argued solutions, and you have to have a clear, logical organization, so on and so forth. So again, going back to what Marina proposed, what are the challenges that we are going to be facing? Could someone read these? Since I'm running out of breath and I'm very hungry too. The challenges or the problems that you might.
Oh, problems are not focused enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you want me to read or you?
Yes.
Okay. Problems are not focused enough.
Mm-hmm.
Problems are not solvable.
Mm-hmm.
Problems required subject matter expertise not realistically possible to students.
Mm-hmm.
And defining the problem takes over the essay and solutions become secondary.
Right. And more?
And defining the problem takes over the essay and solutions become secondary. Is the same thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is repeated. Definitely, it is in larger script. So an effective response to objections and alternative solutions, or the essay may fail to consider alternative perspectives. The essay may acknowledge other perspectives, but it may struggle when trying to respond to them. And obviously, who was going to read? Was it you, Jasmine? Are you there, Jasmine Rios?
It was you, Professor. I was going to read.
Okay, go ahead.
Essays struggle with logical development and organization. Proposals remain unclear because authors have had trouble separating the features.
Exactly. And continue, please.
Oh, okay, there's like something on like during the pandemic, like okay, struggle with research.
Yes, researching.
Okay, struggles
For
with
instance,
researching.
no, you can't do much, for instance, let's say field research, but you could do survey, you could interview basically people online, and you could do online research. You don't have to go to the library and check e-books and e-articles. Continue, please.
When is this due?
Let's talk about that at the end. Continue.
Okay, challenge with library-based research. Challenge with field research and finding appropriate academic source.
Continue, please.
Formatting based on MLA, grammar and mechanics of citations, integration of sources into your text through summarizing, paraphrasing, and using direct or indirect speech, direct and indirect quotations.
Right. So here you have some basically in-text citations and works cited. This is a website, Purdue University, that could help you. So choose a problem for which you can propose a solution, things that would like to change in your community, clubs, organization, work. For instance, I wonder if you read the first two essays. I think I assigned them last week. Did you? You didn't? So make sure
the
that...
essay?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
So this is chapter... What chapter is it? Proposing a solution?
It's
Five.
chapter 5. 5.
Proposing a solution. In the blue book, it is chapter 6, but in the red one, it is chapter 5. So Patrick O'Malley's proposal is to replace high-stake exams with more frequent low-stake quizzes. And he draws heavily on academic research and studies about the effects of various, basically, testing. Do you have the book?
Yes.
Should we give it about 10 minutes for silent reading so that we know what we're talking about? This is a very good, basically, essay. And its argument is that, you know, definitely what we need is more frequent but low stake quizzes rather than big one-time or two-time midterm or exams. Or we should just let it...
Oh, we could, I guess we could, yeah, take a break and to read the essay. I don't know the reading from the book.
Right now it is 8:31. If we give it basically 10 minutes, we should have enough time to go back to discussing the example. And definitely we should talk about the process. And Jasmine asked about basically deadline, important dates. How many weeks do we have left?
I think 4.
4 or 5, right?
Yeah, including the final week, it is 5 weeks.
Yes.
So definitely the first draft of this essay would be due in 2 weeks. But in between, in a matter of a week, you need to have the statement of purpose and the annotated bibliography, and followed by a progress report.
Journal, summary.
No, this one doesn't include any of those anymore.
Okay.
So this chapter would not include any of those.
Where is it on the assignments? I don't see it.
So it is basically where I opened it. If you go to modules,
Oh, okay.
But there is journal 4.
Go
It's
down.
from another chapter.
Journal 4 is different. It is for chapter 4. Arguing for a position, but you're not writing an essay. So it is here. You see that?
Yes.
Got it.
Annotated
Here you have the annotated bibliography.
bibliography.
So what is an annotated bibliography? An annotated bibliography is actually the 5 sources that you're going to be using in your paper. You have to develop an annotated bibliography of not 3, I said 5, right? Academic sources that you will be using in your research paper. And it has to be alphabetized, and you will submit it to Canvas. There is an assignment called annotated bibliography. So what does an annotated bibliography consist of? A summary of what the source is, assessment or evaluation, and reflection. So you will pick only those sources you are going to be using in your essay. Do you see my screen? Or I should.
Yes.
Yes. Same.
You see Purdue University? You see,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, at the bottom.
Yeah.
you see that Purdue?
Yes.
Okay, so here is basically a good source, MLA style. This is an example. Here, there is the summary of the source. This is the assessment, and this is reflection. As you could see, before that, you have the author's last name, first name, title, and publisher, and the date of the publication. This has to be alphabetical. And as you could see, it uses what is called hanging indentation. Do you see that? So the paragraphs begin under the first name. There is indentation, as you could see.
Got it.
You see that? It's called hanging indentation. So that is how basically, this is APA, but the first one is MLA. So again, you have the bibliographic information about the source. What is this part? What is this part called? So for instance,
Summary.
summary, thank you very much, offers honest advice on the nature of writing life, complete with insecurities and failures, taking a humorous approach to the realities of being a writer. And then the second paragraph is, in the process, Lamott includes writing exercise designed to be both productive and fun. Lamott offers some advice for those struggling with the anxieties of writing, but her main point and project seems to be offering the reader a reality check regarding writing, publishing, and struggling with one's own imperfect humanity. So this is what the evaluation or the assessment. And the last paragraph,
reflection.
this text should easily be included in the curriculum for a writing class. Several of the chapters in part 1 address the writing process and would serve to generate discussion on students' own drafting and revising process. Some of the exercises would also be appropriate. So this is what?
Reflection.
Reflection. So as you could see, you could apply this to problem solution sources that you find. The author's last name, first name, title, publisher, date of publication, summary of the problem solution essay, the kind of short assessment, and your reflection. Now, when you do this with the annotated bibliography, then you have quite a bit of your text. You could definitely add these to your essay. So that's how you build up basically the essay or the paper as you go along. Any questions?
Then we should first choose the professor. We should first choose the sources, and after we finish this, we should write about our research paper.
First, you should choose the problem.
Oh yeah.
Before the problem chooses you, right?
And can we pick up like 4 or 5 problems and send to you? Maybe which one is better? Because I think a lot about that, but I didn't find like.
What is the most serious problem in your particular community, Marina?
It's in my country or here?
Here. I mean, you know, you have a sizable Afghani immigrant community in Los Angeles.
Yeah, but
Don't tell me that they don't have any problems.
but I'm living in Anaheim.
Yeah, but still,
There's,
you know, you were talking about Afghani, for instance. Let me just show you something. For instance, if you go to Google Scholar, let me share my screen with you. You see that? Do you see my screen?
yes.
Okay, so let me just do a search on, I'm not going to Google general search because you will be spending the rest of your life and my life and everyone's life in this class, and we would not be able to read everything that has been written about Afghanis. So we're going to be using Google Scholar, which means it is more limited, but still it is going to be monumental. So let's say Afghani immigrants, US. How many were found?
23.
Can you read that number?
It's 23,200.
In 0.6 seconds. Okay, let me change this to California. How do you spell California? How many did I find?
It's 20,400.
There are more Afghanis in California than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So let me change it to California, Afghani immigrant problems. Los Angeles.
Oh, it means that maybe I can choose like the education.
Exactly. Or, you know, it could be cultural problems, cultural adaptation,
Yeah.
language problems. It could be any of those. So the role of leader and a social marketing approach, it gives you basically anything. So we have to be more specific. For instance, you just mentioned what? Afghani immigrants.
One problem.
One problem. For instance, cultural adaptation. Afghani immigrants, cultural adaptation, something. Afghani refugees in Iran, but definitely it might be better if we, for instance, limit our search to refugees, for instance, in the United States, juggling Afghan mothering in diaspora. You see, that's more specific. It's,
Yeah.
how can you be an Afghani mother in diaspora? You know what that means. And this is something that you could find basically the PDF file. Deportation as a way of life for young Afghan men.
Yeah.
So as you could see, being a woman, a Muslim, an Afghan in the US, what else do you want from life? You have the best of everything. Do you see that?
Yeah, I got it right now. I understand what you're saying.
So does anyone else have an idea that we could, you see, that is how you narrow it down. You narrow it down so that it becomes manageable. And obviously, you know, it has to be a problem that you can find sources on.
How about Hispanic, Hispanic, careers or something like that, like education-wise?
Hispanic careers, that's probably very broad. For instance, you could look at, let's say, Hispanic career changes, maybe. Let's see if something, changing patterns in career choices among African American, Hispanic, and Anglo children.
But there's not much Hispanics out there who like own a business or something.
So job mobility and early career wage growth of whites, African Americans, and Hispanic, basically women. So definitely that is not a bad topic. You know, if you could narrow it down, or maybe you could look at the trend that still continues to be a problem compared with other communities, but you know, certain careers, for instance, maybe they have recently found their way into those careers.
Yes, very true.
So that is an interesting topic: Hispanic family stability and change. Job mobility, that's a good one. It does a comparative.
So I put it on Hispanic career changes.
So for instance, this one I would say,
yeah.
For instance, it's much more different. I can't read that. But Hispanic adolescent girls, career development. You know, for instance, one of the problems I would see, I would say that, you know, we have that in this class as well. The representation of male students is very, very small. Why?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Because I've noticed that they don't really not succeed, but like they don't really like live up to their expectations.
Yeah, I think, that's an interesting topic, or teenage pregnancies and,
Yeah, something like that.
so you do have, some community related problems, for instance, in East Los Angeles. I don't know how the gang violence basically is now. At one point, it was notorious for gang-related, basically, forms of violence. All those are potential, basically, topics. Does anyone else have an idea? Because soon, actually, as soon as possible, you have to post your statement of purpose. And obviously, I will give you ideas if it is workable or not. But before you adopt the problem, just go on Google Scholar or the databases of the East Los Angeles College Library and do a search to see how you can, first of all, make your search more specific. The more specific it is, the more limited the number of sources that you find. But if it is too specific, then you wouldn't be able to find any sources. If it is too broad, you will just find too many sources to be able to tackle. And once you feel confident about, the kinds of sources that are available, then you should be able to write your statement of purpose. I'm going to be exploring this particular problem in my community, why it is important, and definitely how you're going to be approaching the problem. And that will be followed by the annotated bibliography. So if you do them side by side, it would be much easier to tackle the annotated bibliography. Any questions? So make sure that you read chapter 5, chapter 6, proposing a solution. And definitely you have less time, and this is more important a project because it has more weight as well. If you have not purchased The Secret Lives of Bees, you don't have the electronic version or the hard copy of the book, make sure you get it and start reading it. You have actually about 2 weeks to finish the book. Soon you will hear basically from me in terms of what you are going to be doing. But we are going to break down the book into 4 sections. And you have almost a week and a half, 2 weeks to finish the entirety of the book.
Mr. I was going to talk to you about late assignments and missing.
It's okay. I will not penalize late assignments. I will extend.
Yes, can you open up all of the ones I'm missing?
Yeah, I will. I know last time I did promise, I will definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.